Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Whiskey Throttle Media. We're here on our first episode of our new series, Picture This, where we're really going to focus on some memorable moments over a rider's career. And I think what a first person to kick us off with is Zach Osborne. What's going on, Zach? How are you, man?
Yeah, doing great, boss. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, like we were discussing before we started, doing a little bit of moving right now, moving into a new house. We've been building for about 17 months, so been a long process, but we're stoked to be here now. And sorry it took so long to make this happen, but here we are.
No, we appreciate it. And like we were talking before I hit record, there were so many moments of your career that it was hard to pick some photos that we'll look at here in a minute that stand out because there was just so many. So we could have had 10 pictures and gone on for 8 hours, but I try to pick some that I think that are the most interesting and you can give us a unique perspective into that. So, but before we get started, how's your retired life, man? I know you're doing, GNCC and you had some injuries that you were working back from, but how has life been since, you stopped racing in 2021?
Yeah, it's been good. It was definitely strange at first, not only for me but for my family as well. Like that was what we knew, traveling 30 weeks a year, being on the road, being in the motorhome, being in a plane, all that stuff. So a little bit of an adjustment, but now I've kind of settled in into my retirement gig, I guess you would say, my second retirement gig now, racing off road for Yamaha. So I'm enjoying that a lot. Like you said, I had some injuries at the beginning of the year that just really set me back. I was in a really good spot going into the season and broke my elbow and just kind of wrecked things for me. But working hard right now over this little what they call the summer break and doing a lot of training. Going to race a J Day off road race this weekend in Minnow, Maine. So yeah, still doing a bit of riding, bit of racing, and a lot of training. That's what I enjoy doing. Finally got to my new house and have a shop. So I'm going to be doing some restoration jobs here in a bit that I think people will enjoy to follow along on social media and stuff. So looking forward to a lot. Got a lot to be thankful for. Super blessed and just cruising along.
I got to ask, what are you following the series pretty closely this year, Supercross, Motocross, or you just tuned in whenever you have a chance?
Actually, I think Washougal was the first weekend that I really sat down and watched the whole moto. I have been like fully involved in this moving process and also getting my season back on track. It's just been not what we expected from my side or the team side. Like, they knew where I was at the beginning of the season and I knew where I was. And we've just kind of struggled to get back there since my arm injury. So I really just haven't sat down and watched much TV, to be honest with you. So this weekend in Washougal was the first time I really sat down and watched the motos.
Do you miss any of it, or are you excited where you're at in the new adventure that you're doing?
Yeah, I miss some of it. I don't really miss the acute stress and pressure day in day out. I do miss I do miss the racing a bit. I miss the intensity, and I still am kind of on the weekly, daily routine. So I don't really miss any of that. That was probably the thing I missed the most when I very first retired was just being daily, having a goal, having something to chase and knowing what to do. But I'm kind of back on that program now. So for me, I would say I do miss some little tiny bits, but for the most part, I'm fully content with where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get into it with all the pictures, but you had a unique career, but also, a successful career. So you did most of the things that you probably wanted to do and maybe never thought you would have at some point. But that's why I think it's cool to have you on, unique perspective on your career. And so what I'll do is I'll jump in and I'll pull up the first photo we talked about. And like I said, it was tough to pick one or four or five photos that I thought were that we can talk about. It didn't take 8 hours, but so I pull up the first photo, Daytona, 2006, your very first race as a pro, and I don't think you were actually expected to come do this race, were you? It was kind of a last minute deal, or was that something you guys were just behind the scenes trying to do and you just showed up, or how did that all work out?
It was not really last minute, but I had like maybe a month or 6 weeks. Like I was kind of in between, like after Loretta's in '05, I started riding A class, and then the plan was from the KTM side was for me to race outdoors in 2006. And then I was kind of just like in this in between spot where I wasn't really doing amateur racing and I was waiting on outdoors to start. And at that time, the programs and stuff weren't quite as, strict. And there was this like big plan for you to go to the next level or whatever. And Daytona just kind of seemed like an in between Supercross and motocross race that I could do and get my feet a little bit wet. And yeah, it turned out I was getting my feet and knees and head and all everything wet. So yeah, it was a big transition day that day.
Yeah, I know you ended up 14th. You want back then they had those day qualifying races, right? So you didn't qualify in via practice.
Yeah, I don't remember. I didn't win the day qualifier. I did decent. I want to say I was maybe fourth or something like that. And then I got in out of the heat race. I was ninth in the heat race and blew off the first corner into the photographers, into the crowd, and yeah, big mess, But at the same time, like the goal from everyone was make the main. So I did that from the heat race. No LCQ, which was like a huge blessing looking back. I think I want to say like on the last lap of the heat race, Brandon Jessman was right on my butt for the last transfer spot, and I got him at the finish line. So I was ninth in the heat, and then 14th in the main. But really, like pretty minimal prep. Um, wasn't really ready. Wasn't ready, but wasn't also didn't really know what I was getting myself into. A lot of factors. Just young and not ready really.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty crazy now looking at how the amateurs are coming up. This was I mean, 18, 17, 18 years ago. And you
Wow,
think
that makes you feel old.
I know I'm with you, but you think about it, right? Think of all the prep that the amateur kids have nowadays, right? They're riding at facilities, they're training with all the pro guys, they have moto combines, they have the Supercross futures now. Back then, I mean, what were you guys doing to get ready? I mean, I think you had your own track or you were riding some Supercross, but I mean, the program back then compared to now is just totally different.
Yeah, I had my own track and stuff, but no real outside influence in terms of training or anything like that. My mechanic at the time, Al Biker, was sort of my trainer, I guess you would say. But we really weren't doing that much physical stuff. We were just more riding and flying by the seat of our pants. And yeah, now, I mean, there's, a multitude of people around each guy that's coming up. There's um, a program, a roadmap, if you will, for every single person that's going to these teams and going to these races. So definitely a little bit of a different landscape back then than what we have now.
And also on a KTM back then, those bikes weren't as proven as the Austrian brands are now. How was that bike? I mean, obviously you've ridden a lot of Austrian brands in the last, when you signed with Husqvarna 2015, wasn't a KTM per se, but similar. Compare that bike back then to like one of your recent Austrian brand bikes that you had.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I had never ridden a linkage bike, so I didn't really know the difference. But I mean, the bikes that I most recently rode, as far as Husky goes, were a different level, a different ball game than this bike here. I actually have this exact bike right here in the photo in my storage container that I'm about to uncork here in a few weeks to do a little restoration on it. It's still in really good shape. Still has it's as you see it in this picture. So super grateful to my parents who have kept a lot of stuff from my career, and especially that bike still has like the AMA sticker on the frame and everything. So that's a pretty cool piece. But I like I said, I didn't know any difference. I knew that I had a sick fast bike and I was going racing. I didn't really know my head from a hole in the ground at the time as far as bike setup went, but I knew it was fast and I was gonna give it my go.
Yeah, how old were you how old were you turn pro? 16, 17?
Yeah, I would have been. I turned 16. I turned 16 in September 25th, and I think the race was February, end of February or beginning of March, like normal Daytona time. And I was like 16 and 4 months or something like that, in some odd days, you know. But I still wasn't the youngest at the time that had made a main event, but it wasn't far off. I think that was Davey, like a couple years before, where he had to wait to turn 16, you know.
Yeah.
But still pretty ripe.
Yeah, and looking, you were pretty much a KTM kid the whole time. I know you had to have a stint on Suzuki 85s because I don't think KTM had an 85 at the time or something for a year or two.
Yeah,
Um,
so I did oh um I rode the KTM 65 for 01 and 02, and I rode a Suzuki 80, and then 03 I rode Suzuki, no, sorry, 02 I rode Suzuki 80s only. And then in that was while we were kind of developing the KTM, and then in 03 I started with the KTM. But my parents owned a shop from 98 till 06, I believe. So I was, kind of KTM affiliated the whole time.
that's cool. So after this race, were you guys pretty excited with the result? And did you know if you had a lot of work to do, or were you kind of excited knowing that you got the first race under your belt, or were you really unsure of what was to come next?
I think, like, truthfully, I was like, oh crap, you know. But at the same time, I was like, oh wow, I just raced the Daytona Supercross. So a little bit of surface level happiness and a little bit of deep down anxiety, I would say. Just because I knew where I felt like I was, like where I thought I would be, or where I thought I was at in my program. To get 14th and I'm pretty sure I was a lap down. Um, even considering my first turn crash, that still wasn't great in my mind. So yeah, I was a little bit of mixed emotions, I would say, just knowing like how far I had to go to get to where I thought I was gonna get, where I thought I needed to be or whatever.
Yeah. And this was the only Supercross race you did, and then you went back, trained, and then really made your debut in the outdoors in '06.
Yeah, there was someone got hurt right after this on the team. I want to say Jay Marmont. Yeah, I want to say Jay Marmont got hurt right after this on the team, and they were considering bringing me up to the last whatever 3 or 4 Supercross races that there were, but then they just decided that I couldn't, and there was also some sort of discrepancy with me being so young, and at the time, like, Red Bull was strange about how young you were wearing their stuff or whatever. So that was, I believe, why I rode out of a box fan the whole year, was because of that whole thing. So yeah, different times.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's cool. This is definitely when I think back and you remember the KTM days, and you weren't really on the KTM that long. You did outdoors in '06, '07 Supercross motocross, and then you made that switch to Yamaha of Troy. So it'll lead me to my next picture, but and it's we could talk about this is your first MXGP win, but I want to talk about the precursor to actually getting to this point. You did outdoors in 2006. I think you had a pretty good Hangtown. One of the photos I want to have on here, but it was really hard to find, was Budds Creek 2006. I'm sure that's a memory that, you know, obviously was a good memory, but at some point it was a good memory, but later in the moto it wasn't. But just kind of give us a story on what really led you to going to the MXGP. Did you not have any offers here? Were you just kind of at the end of the road wondering like what you're going to do? Just try to give us a little story on, how you got to this point, and then we'll talk about, your MXGP run.
Yeah, I mean, how I got to this point is a pretty bizarre story. I was riding for Yamaha Troy, like you said, in the beginning of 2008. First round of Supercross at Anaheim. It was super muddy, and I got a little squirrely, caught a tough block, endoed, broke my scapula. So I missed all of Supercross except for, I think I came back and did Houston and Seattle, but I think my bike blew up in Houston. Seattle, I was, I don't know, 8th or 10th or something. Nothing special, nothing to write home about. And then first outdoor round, I crashed going down the last hill before the finish line section was like a little double down the hill into a left hander, and then you went sort of along the fence line to the finish line, and just like sort of sat down on my wrist and broke my um, like the very tip of my radius. So I was out again for like 4 or 6 weeks, and during that time, YOT kind of gave my spot to Brownie, and there was a lot going on within the team where it was the funds were tight, things were folding up, things were going sideways. And earlier that season, I had met the team agent for Steve Dixon's team, the team that you see me with here in the picture. Met him at the Mimi's Cafe in Corona. One morning, he was there with Rob Walters, Doc Wob, as people know him now. I had known Doc Wobbs from when I was a kid, riding for Smith Goggles. He was my goggle guy. So I was sitting there by myself, and they invited me over to talk, just hang out, sit at their table. And we were just like kind of having a laugh about me doing some GPs later in the season when outdoors was over. And like, yeah, 4 weeks later, I didn't really have a gig, and one of their riders got hurt. And yeah, it all like came to fruition. I cut my cast off. Kind of, I wouldn't say that I lied, but maybe didn't tell the full truth. I think I cut my cast off and rode maybe 2 or 3 days before I went there, and yeah, stayed on the same team for 4.5 years. This picture is in Turkey, my one and only GP win. And I think that was the third race in 2009. I won a moto at the end of 2008 in Ireland, but we had a bike problem the second moto, so I DNF. So that was not a GP win, but had quite a few moto wins. But this whole setup was pretty insane. The first GP of the year was in Faenza in Italy, and it came like an insane monsoon rain. And we only raced one moto, and I didn't get any points. I was stuck on a hill. Had a terrible race. And then I think we went to Bulgaria after that, I want to say. Italy, Bulgaria, and then to Turkey. Bulgaria wasn't great either. I was maybe fifth or eighth or something like that. I don't even really remember. Again, nothing to write home about. And then in Turkey, man, it was pretty ruddy, which was something that's my forte, and something I'm comfortable on. And just got there, and I think I was fastest in every session, except I was third or second or third in the first moto. Other than that, it was like a perfect weekend. And yeah, just a crazy place to win a GP, especially as an American, that far east, like the mosque calls waking you up at 5 a.m. and at night, like just crazy stuff, stuff that now looking back, like I should have been so much more, I guess nervous or like afraid of, just because of where I was. But like at that time, nothing really mattered to me except going racing, and that was my racing opportunity. So I was all in.
Yeah, and did you ever think about when you turned pro in '06 and even going to '07, did you ever think that you in 2 years later or a year and a half later that you'd be over in Europe racing MXGPs?
No, I had no idea. My original contract with KTM was for 2006, 2007, 2008, and the agreement was broken at the end of 2007 just due to lack of results. And obviously, the economy was taking a dump and all that stuff. They were trying to kind of trim some fat. So I was cut from the team. So yeah, I was really like, I felt like I had a long-term position at KTM just with my history there and all that stuff. But yeah, it never crossed my mind that of course, I always would have loved to have raced a GP because I spent so much time in Europe as a younger kid, and always thought that GPs were super cool and just a different look at racing. But never did I think it would be that quick, and when I would win a GP in Turkey.
Yeah, and I remember hearing some stories about when you're over there. I know one about sleeping in a tent somewhere and just all these crazy things, right? You go over there, you're young, you're it's obviously totally different countries than over here in the States. And was it a culture shock to you, or were you just embracing the moment? You're racing your dirt bike and you're trying to do the best you can, or was there times where you're like, man, what am I doing over here?
No, like people ask me that often, like, did you ever feel that scared, or did you ever feel, nervous, or like, what about this place or that place? And that stuff just wasn't in my mind, honestly. Like, I don't know. Looking back now, being 33, having kids of my own, imagining them going there in 8 years, like, scares my socks off, right? Like, it's a hard no. It's not even a maybe, it's a hard no. But I didn't even, I didn't really care. Like, it was just, that was my racing opportunity, and if I wanted to make it, that was where I needed to be.
Yeah, and you had a couple good seasons over there. Like you said, you had that win in Turkey. You had a lot of second place finishes. Did the fans embrace you over there? You have an American over there, which I mean, at that time there wasn't any Americans racing over there. And so you did it full time for a couple of years. Did the fans embrace you, and were they excited to see you? Was it just a cool experience, representing, the USA over there?
Yeah, I definitely would say that they embraced me and that they welcomed me, especially British fans. Like, at the end of my tenure, like, I felt like I was British, like, go to the British GP and there's plenty of people that were cheering me on. And um, I always tried to kind of not be that American guy in Europe, like, you see tourists that are like, oh, I can't say that word. I was always trying to be blend as much as I could, not try to stick out and, like I said, be that American guy, that was annoyed by everything, or that was miserable to be there. So, yeah, for me, I felt like that they were extremely gracious, always supportive. And I never really had any run-ins with any fans, or even any riders, really.
Yeah, that's cool. And so you did those 4 or so years over there, and then I remember you coming back in Supercross. I think it was 2012. You were still on the Dixon Yamaha, and you raced some of the West Coast rounds, and you got a podium in Oakland. Was that sort of your way of trying to come back and show your worth over here and get some, noticed by some teams, or what was the idea about, going over for some Supercross rounds before you went back over to Europe for a couple more?
Yeah, so that was, um my that would have, going into 12 would have been my last season as an MX2 rider because I was aging out.
Mm.
So I had a ride to come back. Sorry, let me think about this. I had a ride with Rockstar Suzuki to come back at the end of 11 to ride for them in 2012. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
took it to Steve and I was like, hey, I'm gonna take this deal because it's like my one chance to go home, and I've got to do it while it's hot. I guess I don't even know why they've chosen to call me at this point. It's not like I've done anything amazing this season, but I've got to take this deal. And he was like, well, there's nobody left that's sort of your level that I can still get, and if you'll stay and do your last year, which I really felt like I wanted to do or needed to do. If you'll stay and do that, then I'll take you to do 4 supercrosses on our bike, which I knew our bike was really, really good. I knew that we had good power, and I knew that it would be kind of all in from his side too. Um, the biggest like catch was we had Olin suspension, and they didn't really have any supercross knowledge, but we actually were able to build an incredible bike, an incredible setting. Worked with the guys there, Olin's Marty and Stacy, and we had a great 4 rounds. We had so much fun. Um, we were racing from under the Rock River semi, but we were more or less racing out of my van, which was just super cool. Like, go to LA, get on the podium, ride the bike in the back of the van, and roll out. Like, it was pretty cool. Looking back, it was awesome. I actually still have that bike as well, that I'm gonna restore here pretty quick. So that's super cool. That you brought up 2 bikes that I still have.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. I remember you coming back, and I didn't know. I didn't know if there was ever I didn't know of that Rockstar Suzuki deal. So yeah, I didn't know if you were while you're over there, if you were still trying to come back, or you just knew you had to put in results over there to hopefully come back one day. Because I'm assuming that you wanted to come back. But did you ever thought about just sticking it out and doing the MX1 class over there too, or were you just trying to keep options open that to see what you could do?
Yeah, it definitely crossed my mind. I mean, my wife and I talked about it numerous times because we both still enjoy like Euro life and um, all that it is. We talked about it like what was our best option, and we both just felt like that we had unfinished business here in the States, and that um, if possible, we would make the jump back here. But if not, like MX1 was an option for sure. I would have done it. I yeah, I would still do it honestly. Even now, I would love it. But yeah, I think it, it was just the next move for us. We were getting married at the end of 2012, and um, it all looked like the right way to go.
Yeah, so that's cool. So you did those 4 races, and then did Geico Honda approach you, and then you signed a deal with them for 2013?
Yeah, I actually had an offer from Geico, um, and Rockstar Suzuki again, and also TLD Honda at the time. And I was talking with PC, but they wouldn't let me ride the bike before I signed the deal. So I was kind of out on that. And Geico at the time was just the best team in the pits. I felt like, so that was kind of the basis of my choice.
Yeah, so you came back and did that 13, 14. Had some good results, right? No wins or anything like that, but you showed that you're a lot different person than when you when you departed the States a few years back. And then you signed with the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna team in 2015, changed up your training program. I know you started working at Alden Baker, and it seems like that switch and that move and all of those things really what propelled your career to the next level. What are your do you think that as well? Do you think it was the training side, the bike, or just the experience you had in the whole package, or what really made you think you finally got to that level that you thought your potential could reach?
Yeah, so actually in 15, when I took the Rockstar Husky deal, I the beginning of the year I was working with just a good friend of mine, Steve Quate, as my trainer. And then in the summer, I got an opportunity to go to Colorado and train with Eli and John Tomac. Learned a ton. I think I won a moto. No, I didn't win a moto at High Point. I got on the podium. The following year I won a moto. But that was a big learning experience for me. Learned a lot from those guys. Super grateful for the time there that I had. And then going into 16, I was in this photo with the guy on the very left there, Ryan Rowell, who I'm training with now. We just had a really good friendship. We still have a great friendship. Um, and we found like kind of the sweet spot for my training and like balance in life and happiness and all those things that I had always kind of struggled with because I was always just kind of hammering too much, I guess you would say. So this right here, this one, like race wise, I would say is probably one of the most special race wins. Just because it was literally 10 years later, um, back at Budds Creek where it all kind of came unraveled in 2006. This was, I think there was one more race in the season. So this was kind of my last two races with Raul. Just so many things that this embodies. I already knew that we all already knew that I was going to Allen's the following year to ride with the 450 guys, and so it was pretty special. A lot of emotions that day.
Yeah, I would say how ironic that at the track 10 years prior that you said it pretty much all came unraveled, right? And then to get your first win at the same track, crazy it was 10 years later and all the things you went through to get to that point. Just how ironic that it was back at the place that you probably wanted to forget the most about.
Yeah, I think like kind of it had to happen there, right? Like that had to be where the sort of curse was broken, if you will. I think I went 4-1
For
on the
one.
day, and Fortner went 1-4. So we actually tied, but obviously I got the overall in the end. But yeah, it was almost surreal that that is where I won my first race at. Like that was the start of it all, and the start of the rest of the time. I feel like of my career. Um, so far. Like it was just like the launching board for the next year. Really, I think that obviously coming to Alden's, going to Alden's, whatever you want to say, was a huge piece of me being who I who I am today. But also this win right here was like the one that broke the ice for me, and kind of once you get that, it opens the floodgates. And um, going into that next year, it was such a huge monkey off my back and weight off my shoulders that I was able to just train, ride, and not worry. Up to this point, I was super close this in 2016, this year, going to winning a couple of Supercrosses. I think three of them were like painfully close, and just never happened. I was second, I was third, I was second, I was third. I remember I got second at San Diego, and I was so pissed off with second. Like at one point in my career I would have given anything for a second, but I just got to that point where it just wasn't good enough anymore. And it hurt. Like it truly hurt to get on the podium. So yeah, with that said, like it's one of those things where once you know you can do it, it just comes naturally.
Yeah, I always think it's pretty cool to see when someone clicks off that first win or first overall, gets that good finish, how it just somewhat spirals and keeps going, right? It's like you finally get the monkey off your back, you can do it. To where maybe before you sort of question yourself whether you could. So, and then once you get it done, that, if you just take it you didn't take advantage of it to where, and I also think what's interesting is this was 10 years from, really your first outdoor season. That's a long time. You went from being a young kid to, an adult. And then for it to be 10 years later, where you see some guys that come up nowadays and, some of the good amateur riders that come up, they get a year or two shot and then, you don't hear from them again, where, you know, that could have been your story, right? But you took advantage of an opportunity to go to Europe, grinded it out there, did what you could to come back, and then still had to grind it out to get to even to this point. So I think, it's not always the easy road, and the road you took is definitely not a common road, but to get here 10 years later to still have, that dedication is pretty special, I think.
Yeah, like I said, there was a ton of emotions this day because it was like that was the whole, that was the like the end of that circle for me. Like that was the turn the page moment, to the next chapter of sort of me winning, was just getting to this right here after such a long time away and so many almost and so many failures. Like this was a major triumph in my career, like one of the ones where I would say it was like a little bit of a path changer, if you will.
Definitely. So you go into 17, um, which we'll go to the next photo. I couldn't pick just one for Vegas 2017. I was actually there that night, and it was absolute chaos and insane, like the crowd and everything. And so, you had a good Supercross season. You won some races. You go into that East-West shootout. You, Jordan Smith, and Joey Savacci, and um, when I think about the top left photo, you going down in that first corner, you were down for a long time. Um, what was what was going through your mind? 'Cause you knew, right? You knew what was on the line. You knew you had to beat these guys for the title. When you're laying there picking up your bike, actually picking up Dakota Alex's bike off your bike, were you just thinking, "Man, it's over. That's it." Like, or were you just like, "Oh, well, hey, I'm just gonna send it." Like, what was going through your mind?
Yeah. The Well, first of all, Dakota Alex and I got together, not like no, not mad at him or whatever.
Yeah,
Dakota Alex and I got together um, at Detroit, which is kind of what got me in this situation because I had like a 17 or 18 point lead going into Detroit that turned into, negative something leaving Detroit. So when I got up and I realized it was him, I'm like, not again. Like, how did this happen? And in Detroit, like his foot peg went through my front wheel, and that's why I was so far back, because we had to change the front wheel and all that stuff. So I go to pick up my bike, and the flagger was trying to pick up his bike, and his foot peg was between on the Husky, like the last two the after the cross of the spokes is really tight to the hub. So when the flagger was trying to pick it up, it was trying to break those spokes out, and I was like, no, 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 no. Like, so that's why you see me like pick it up from the cases, is because I was trying to like pick it up out of my spokes before I ripped, before the dude ripped it out. So, yeah, I mean, I was down forever. Like uh, I didn't think I had any hope, but like maybe one of them crashes and I get second or I get third, or it was still going to be my best result ever in the Supercross series if I could just keep going, basically. So I got up to just do that, just ride.
Yeah, it was wild. I know you probably came by and saw Jordan Smith had wrecked in that high speed section, right? He was having a good race, and then he had a pretty big get off in that high speed section, and so it's like, okay, like where's Joey at? And I know Joey had a few of his own problems, but did you could you see that you were catching those guys? Because there was a huge gap, and even before we get to that next top right photo of you and him in the last second to last corner, I mean, he was still a ways ahead of you. And so you're just pushing and trying to catch him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought they were going to red flag the race for Jordan because he was there at what I thought was unconscious for a lap, and then he was still there the next lap, I believe. So he was down for 2 laps, which normally could bring out a red flag, which is, obviously I didn't want Jordan to be hurt, but I was hoping for a red flag. Like that's what I needed. That would have put me back into it. And I it didn't come out, so I just kept going. I don't remember very much from the race at all, just because I was in another state of mind, honestly. Like I don't even know how to explain it. When I passed Mitchell Harrison, and he passed me back, that I thought was the end of it. Like I was like, I had eyes on Joey. I knew AC was winning from the board, the scoring board. And I knew I was catching Joey, and I honestly, you know, Joey and I have become quite good friends most recently, and every time we talk about it, we each learn something new about what I had going on and what he had going on, and what what it all looked like for both of us, which is quite funny. But one day we're going to do a podcast about it and tell a whole of both of our stories. But yeah, the Mitchell Harrison pass, I don't even know how he passed me back. I still to this day don't know how he passed me back, and I've talked to him about it. Like how, like I was going wide open and you rode by me. Like why? First of all, why were you in ninth? And second, how did you do that? So then I had to pass him back. I had to roll the double after the
Hmm.
triple, going into the whoops, and that I was like, yep, that did it. Like it was going to be really close, but now it's just going to be oh well. And then even coming into the stadium on the last lap, like I've watched it on TV. I'm going to say I've watched the whole race maybe 300 times now, like just because like it's
Yeah,
it's one of the things that motivates me. um and I still don't feel like I'm gonna get him, like i, I
you're
still have
still
we
far.
turn.
Yeah, you're far back. I mean, coming in off the
Yeah,
thunder or the long fast section, he was still a ways ahead. It was going to
yeah,
be
and I
a.
still had to pass Melross. Melross was still
Mhm.
between us, so it was still a huge stretch, right? It was close, but just outside the money.
Yeah,
um so yeah, I got Melross after the double triple double or roll double triple or whatever it was, and um I jumped that triple, and I remember I was like a little bit offline to the left, which I wasn't sure that I was gonna make the turn down that 90 berm. And when I did, I just like caught boost mode down that berm because I was set up just a little bit wider, and it just flowed me down into it. And I just took that speed into the whoops. And um, then I was like, oh crap, now I'm like really close. Like it's either now or in the last corner, but that's not even a decent guarantee because it's a 90,
90.
it's a right-hander. He might get to the finish line before you do. You might in a 90, you're gonna have to hit somebody like kind of in the side, and then maybe you fall that way. And the second whoop section, I was just like wide open, basically, like it was do or die. Um, and yeah, I didn't really feel like I hit him that hard. But there was a huge chunk missing out of the berm, like where we had ridden, kind of the belly of the berm ridden, and then there was like a hard spot at the end. And when he hit that, he just grenaded, and his bar was caught on my jersey, and it nearly dragged me down, like so close to dragging me down with him. And yeah, I don't know, like when I crossed the finish line, it was like waking up, honestly. Like it was the most pressure relieving thing I've ever felt in my life. I don't know what those guys went through like on the pressure side that night, but even the week leading up to it, it was like nothing I have ever experienced. It was just insane.
Yeah, I remember marking you guys, and then when Joey went down at early in the race, and I saw you're so far back, and then you just kept creeping and creeping, and I'm like, man, he's got to go. And then, coming that last lap, and you really closed. Like, I remember when you were talking about Harrison passing you. I think you messed up that corner for the triple or whatever, and it's like, man, that really took some wind out of your sails. But even going in those last two whoop sections, I'm like, I don't know. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, you just, I've seen that video hundreds of times too. You just sent it to the left side, and I think, and that if you guys do a podcast, that'd be cool to kind of hear both sides of your guys' stories, because it's definitely probably one of the best races I've seen for a championship coming down to last lap, two corners left. I think if he was in your shoes, or if most people were in your shoes, they would have done the same pass. Like I said, it wasn't overly dirty or anything like that. You had to make something happen, because like you said, going to that 90 in the next corner, like chances are probably wasn't going to happen there, right? So that was your last opportunity, and man, it was. I remember the place erupted, and I can imagine what that feeling was like as you cross the finish line.
Yeah. It was insane. Like it was just a bucket of emotions poured out of me. Like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I got back to him. I couldn't believe that I was a champion. I couldn't believe so many things. We had all put in a ton. My wife and I took a big risk. Not a big risk, but a risk financially to go to Alden's. And we could have stayed in California and been comfortable and kept trying to do what we were doing. But we took a risk and came to Florida, and it was just a culmination of all that pressure and all those things and all those sacrifices that not only I had made, but my wife had made, my daughter had made, everyone around me had made to get us to that point. Like it just all popped whenever I crossed the finish line.
Yeah, and I think right, 2017, 11 years after turning pro, you get your first race outdoor win, 2016, and you get to that top step after being in the sport 11 or so years. A lot of think about Carmichael and some of those guys are out. They're out of the sport in 10 years. So for you
Yeah.
getting to that point in year 11, like all the effort and just how much work you put in over the years to finally get to that point. Some people probably would have given up. It's not something easy to do. Been grinding for that long and just getting beat up and battered and having to do all these alternative things that you had to do. So yeah, I think this is probably one of the coolest races I've seen. I remember I was there in person, and it was just when you went down the first corner, everybody was just, it was like a gasp. But then Jordan went down and Joey went down, and then you could see you catching, and it was like fireworks, man. That last corner, it was something
Yeah.
else.
I felt like the air was out of the stadium a couple times, but the last couple laps, it was. I mean, I could feel it. I'm sure everyone could feel, just the sheer volume of like anxiety that was in the place, and then like when I was walking back down the start straight, just bawling my eyes out, those 450 guys were just going nuts on the starting line, like cheering, clapping for me, which was like a crazy, um, just a crazy moment for me, to have the respect from those guys. And then that 450 race was insane.
Hmm.
And then out of nowhere, it started pouring rain. Like it was just the weirdest night of all time. It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember them going to interview you after the race. You're like on the start straight and you still have your helmet on, and they're trying to interview you, but you're just overcome by emotions, obviously. So that's one's hard thing, I'm sure, to be in your guys' position where you have such an emotional event happen, and then you have to try to pull together somewhat and talk about it. So, but that's cool. Um, and then so you went from 2017 winning that title in Supercross. You won the outdoor title in 2017. You repeat Supercross in 2018. You go in the outdoors in 2018 and get hurt. But how was it just getting that first championship under your belt and then just clicking them off like you've been there, done that? Was that just such a cool feeling to know that you're the guy to beat, that you can do it? Was just the confidence just switched when you were able to wrap up your first championship?
Yeah, 2018 was probably the hardest championship I won. Just with expectation from the year before, um, from my side, from the team side, from everything, and then also the issues that I kind of faced with the AMA from the prior year probation and all that stuff. That was a really tough one on me. I got seventh to win the title in Vegas over Jordan Smith, and I got seventh the year before, and they both felt so different. Like the seventh to win in 2017 was the most incredible
Yeah.
moment, one of the most incredible moments of my life, and the seventh to win in 2018 was like, wow, like that was, what was that really like? It was a strange feeling to win that way and to just yeah, kind of be blasé about it, I guess. That one was really a strange feeling for me. But yeah, to your point, like just starting to feel that whenever I went to the race, like I was gonna get on the podium. That was an unbelievable feeling. Like every weekend that I felt like I could win, like that was just crazy. It kind of gave me a sense of what it would have felt like to be RC or James, that would, or even Jet now. Like you're going every weekend to win. Not that I was even close to that, but like for me, going every weekend to have a chance at a podium was such an awesome feeling. It made working during the week so easy because yeah, you're gonna get a trophy. Like I loved that feeling, and it just kind of gave me a sense of what that would be like to be able to show up every weekend and know you're gonna win. Like that's pretty insane.
Yeah, I can imagine all the suffering during the week doesn't feel as bad when when you go to the races that you have a chance of winning. Where if you're doing all that suffering and you're shooting for a top 10 or whatever, it probably makes it a lot more difficult. That's for sure.
Yeah, you definitely feel like 50 pounds lighter when you're riding on a Monday after a win. That's for sure.
So you moved to the 450 class 2019. Um, did Supercross, Motocross. I mean, had good results, and then COVID year was crazy, right? 2020. But you look at this photo, you win the 450 Motocross Championship in 2020. Was that like the culmination of everything? Like that moment made you realize like I pretty much accomplished everything that I set out to do? Was it that satisfying, or like what was that feeling of that year in the outdoors? You guys, I know you and AC had some pretty good battles, and but ultimately you came out on top, and yeah, just kind of run us through that.
Yeah, it was a huge surprise to me. I had a huge crash um, in the whoops before the Atlanta Supercross. I think it went Indy, Atlanta, Daytona, and then it was stopped. After Indy, before Atlanta, I believe. Was it Indy? Yeah, I want to say it was Indy. Anyways, before Atlanta, I crashed just riding during the week. Broke five vertebrae, um, bruised like all of my internals, big concussion, the full deal. And I was really struggling during COVID and after COVID, after I started riding again. I had a really tough time, like mentally, just overcoming the injury and getting to a point where I felt good on the bike again. And I really highly considered not going to Salt Lake. Like that was a last minute decision to go there because I was just so far off in training and so far off in my riding. And then we went there, and obviously it was the best stretch of 450 Supercross I had in my 450 career. And that momentum, you know, I credit a little bit of that, or a good bit of that, to Alden, actually, because we were like, all the riders were pretty sure we weren't gonna really have an outdoor season, and he was like, "No, like we need to keep going. They're gonna get something together. They're gonna get something together." And we were like kind of pushing back, like, maybe we
Yeah,
are,
it's gonna
maybe we're
happen.
not. Like, it's doesn't we don't really have to do this. So, um, yeah, we just kept cranking, and for me, it was just totally where opportunity meets preparation. Like, that was that moment for me. If I have to kind of sum it up, I would say that was exactly that saying. I think it's pretty cliche, but at the same time, that's exactly what it was. It was where I was more prepared than other people, I feel like, to do the job. And yeah, we got it done. It was that season was really tough for me, just because, like I said, the injury. I was sick to start the Supercross season, and it was like it lingered for 8 weeks. Took me forever to get better, and as soon as I started to feel better, I got hurt, and then COVID, and then it was just like, I just felt like I could not find any momentum. And then we went to Salt Lake, and it all just kind of came together. I got a fifth at the first race, and then a fourth, and then I led some laps and got some podiums, and then finally a win, and then um, that just carried over into the motocross season. Made that little training block. I think we had 8 or 9 weeks between the last round in Salt Lake and the first round of outdoors, and that just made a huge difference for me going into that little block of training, to be able to have that momentum, and um, know that I was kind of headed in the right direction finally in the 450 class.
Yeah, and I always wonder for you guys that, 250 champions that come up and, you look at the 450 class now, it's full of champions, whether it was 250 regionals or 250 outdoors. Does your mindset have to change a little bit knowing that you're going again in the class on the 450 class against guys that have also won championships too? Or do you still try to go into it with the same mindset as, I'm a champion, I should be winning? Is it hard to when you get to that class to know where you're going to be, or just to manage expectations, or are you just still trying to win?
Yeah, I mean, you're still trying to win until that thing slams you a couple times, and then you're like, all right, maybe I'm trying to get fifth, or maybe I'm trying to get eighth. Like, and that was exactly the case for me. Like, going into 19, so like the 2018 off season, um, I was riding the best I ever rode in my whole career, I believe. Like, 450 Supercross, I felt like I could truly win, and we were like mid-December, and I hit neutral on a wheel tap and ended my brains out, and that kind of not finished my Supercross season, but it definitely hampered it. I think the first top five I got was like Nashville or Daytona, maybe, which was way on down the season, way on down the line. But I was more like a 10th or 11th place guy until that point, and then I finally got on the podium in New York. Really should have won that race. That's one of the ones, like, looking back on my career, that's one of the ones I really let get away from me. Um, but yeah, I think you try to keep that mindset, but also there's just a lot more factors and things you have to deal with in the 450 class that you don't have to deal with in the 250 class, and um, that's a little bit underestimated sometimes, in my opinion. But yeah, I learned them lessons the hard way.
Yeah, and so you go winning a championship 2020. I mean, you're probably on an all-time high. That's premier class outdoor championships. I think are pretty gnarly, grueling. You go into 21 Supercross, and your 20 if 2021 was your last year. Um, did you know as you're holding that trophy right there and then that you were only going to race one more year, or is that just something with injury and everything else that finally just caught up to you?
No, I definitely did not have that in my plans. And I started the Supercross season in 21 in decent spot. Like, um, I was, I don't remember. I fell in the first turn at the first race in Houston, and then the second race I was 2 laps from getting a podium, I believe. And then third race, I think I was down in the first turn again or something. Just, it started kind of rough. And then yeah, my back took a turn for the worse. Not that I'd never had any back issues before. And one day I was riding Supercross, seat bounced, felt a weird twinge, whatever. Raced that weekend in Orlando, the first Orlando. The next week wasn't really getting any better. Managed to get on the podium, I believe, that weekend,
Hmm. Yeah, you got
Orlando
third.
too.
Yep.
And then the following week, it was just like, yeah, I can't move anymore. I don't know what to do. And that led me down 2-year path to rehab, really. And I was in a position where they weren't really willing to wait on me to rehab, and I wasn't really willing to get back surgery because all the surgeons I saw told me that I didn't really need surgery. It wasn't that severe. They didn't really know why I had so much pain. So if they told me, you know, the best guy that I saw told me if I had your time and your resources, I would totally try everything um, before I got back surgery, or let someone cut on you. So that's what I did, and I had to kind of take the road to retirement, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, because I know you came back and you did a couple outdoors. I think you only did two in that final in that final year, and you were kind of dealing with that back issue on and off. Um, was it just something that you thought you couldn't fix in a short amount of time to where like the team wouldn't wait on you? Did it take a long time to make that decision that you were done, or were you contemplating it for a while, thinking maybe if I gave myself some 6 months or so, like an ACL injury, and it would be fine? Or how is your back today? Do you still have issues with it? Um, how did that,
No,
how's it
it
going
was
now?
it was a strange situation. I wasn't really kind of. I don't really want to say that. I don't really want to be that guy, but I wasn't really given the option to take the time, and I was offered something else um, that looked really good. So I took that option, and I used most of my rehab time on that I should have been rehabbing on that other option. So it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason, and I firmly believe that. My back is totally good today. I don't have any issues with it. I ride as much as I used to, probably maybe not as much, but a lot. You know, I ride a lot of off road stuff, a lot of physical stuff, and my back's solid. So, yeah, it wasn't ideal. It wasn't really my storybook ending by any means, if you will. But yeah, I'm happy with where I'm at today, and I'm gonna keep plugging away.
So if you had to summarize your career, um, thinking back, having those rough 2 years when you first started, having to go to Europe, coming back and grinding, finally getting to the top level. If you just had to summarize the roller coaster and then what ultimately, how your career ended, where it was, I mean, you're a multi-time champion, lots of race wins, podiums, built a life for you and your family that, you can survive off of. If you just had to summarize how your career was, and did you, in the beginning, did you think it would ever turn out this way, or is this something that you hopefully you thought you would get to this point where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like. There were plenty of days where I never imagined riding a factory 450 like for a team. Like that was way out of the question for me. So I guess like in summary, it was all worth it. Like, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. And there's not many places where I question like what if I would have done this? What would it, like kind of the butterfly effect of like small decisions during my career where those would have landed me. There's maybe one or two spots where I'm like, maybe that would have changed a lot, but would it have been for the better? So yeah, for me, um, I would say just it was all worth it, and it was extremely satisfying, and it still is.
Yeah, and I think it's also cool that and that's why I was happy to get you on here. With all the interviews you've done, you did your own podcast for a little bit. I know on the Pulp MX that you had your own little podcast series going, and so you've been very transparent, always open. So I think it's been cool that people have they know your journey, they've seen all the struggles, and you're, I mean, almost like the people's champ at the end because you've went through so many different things and just showed no quit and determination. So it was really cool to see. Going forward, you're doing the XC2, GNCC racing. I know, like we talked about a little while ago, that you had that injury. How many more races do you have this year, and how long are you wanting to do that? And have you ever thought about showing up at Ironman or any of these races just for some one-off fun, or is that book closed?
Yeah, so I have another year on my contract with Yamaha to continue in XC2, and I plan to. Oh, are you there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I
All right.
plan to continue with that. I definitely would love to do some outdoors if the opportunity was ever there, or the right opportunity was there. I tried to do some this summer, but the timing just wasn't right with my injury and um, everything. So yeah, maybe next year I'll show up. I would love to do Southwick, like that middle bit, Southwick, Redbud. Um, Millville's not my favorite track, but I wouldn't mind to do that one. It's a good racetrack. So yeah, I do still have a hankering for some outdoors. I think my Supercross book is closed. I've had a few, offers from the World Supercross side, but
Mhm.
I don't know that that's, where my brain's at anymore. That's such a fine line. That's such a specialist thing that people way underestimate how much work and how fine tuned and ready and prepared and in shape and all those things that you have to be. So I think for me, the Supercross book's pretty well shut. But I would love to do some outdoors or even a GP or whatever. But my main focus right now is to get my GNCC results where they need to be.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it'd be cool if you showed up, did some outdoor races, like I said, maybe next year, just to get you back on the line. I know you weren't able to run the number one plate, obviously, in 2021, when you basically, you retired. You raced a couple outdoors. Would you come back in running 116? What would you run? Would you go back to the roots and run your amateur number 338?
No, actually, still I still have 16.
Oh,
I
okay,
petitioned for it last year, and I'll probably do the same this year, just for the with just for the sake of it. With if there's never an opportunity for me, so
that's cool.
yeah, I would keep 16.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us today. Like I mentioned, there were so many different photos I could have thrown in here, and I was just trying to think if I can piece it together with, how your career started out. Probably not what you guys expected. The twists and turns going to Europe, that's pretty much unheard of back then, and making your way back and getting to the top step, and then ultimately winning multiple championships and race wins. So it was impressive. It was cool to see as a fan. And it was unfortunate that you had to go out that way, but it's cool that you're doing the GNCC stuff. I know you like to do, and yeah, maybe we'll see you in some outdoors next year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to have gotten the opportunity. So yeah, appreciate it.
All right, man, take it easy. I appreciate it.